So we are only around 24 hours away from the Springboks taking on Italy for the third time in 2025. Now, the first two matches, they were both won comfortably by South Africa. This game, we've seen an extremely experimental lineup from one of the two coaches. The other side coming off a great victory over the Australians just last week. It's a very intriguing game of international rugby, and in this preview, we'll be looking through at said lineups, the key head-to-heads, and then also a prediction at the end of who I think will win this game. But we will start with South Africa. Now, it has been a little bit of time since Rassie announced his lineup, and I still look through at this side and have a few questions about what is going on here. But overall, one thing is for sure, and that is that this backline is absolutely stacked for this contest. You're looking through at some future combos that we will see from South Africa, and then also some massive opportunity for certain forwards in the contest as well. But jumping into it, front row, Bohan Venter, Johan Grobbelaar, and Zachary Porthen. So not a lot of caps for the Springboks across those three men. Johan Grobbelaar, he's been getting opportunities off of the bench alongside Malcolm Marx, so a pretty good mentor in that regard. And then you've got Porthen, who had his debut up against the Japanese not too long ago, and Bohan Venter also getting his first Springbok caps throughout the earlier matches in the calendar year. In the locking duo, Jean Klein, he returns from injury and takes on that number 4 role. No Eben Etzebeth for this matchup. I do believe he will be starting up against the Irish, so there's no need to risk an injury for Eben Etzebeth here. Partnering with Klein, though, it will be Franco Moster, an extremely versatile player. And as crazy as some of these selections seem in terms of reshuffles and whatnot from Rassie, a lot of them, when you really break them down, make perfect sense. And that is why it is so confusing looking through at this side. The likes of a Franco Moster, he did play 7 in the game up against the Japanese, but he is more than capable of playing in that locking duo. If they do need to reshuffle him later on in the game, they've got Argus Snyman as well as Ruan Nokia, two great options off of the bench. So there are plenty of choices in a majority of the different positions. In the loose forward trio, Siya Kolisi starting at 6. I'll be honest, that is one player I was not expecting to see in the Springbok side. I thought just like Eben Etzebeth, they would be resting him for that game up against the Irish. But Kolisi comes in as captain, and honestly, you kind of need that, because with no Eben Etzebeth, no Jesse Creel, no Malcolm Marx, you're in that scenario. Who do you make captain for the Springbok side? In fact, that is my question to you guys in the comments. Theoretically, if Siya Kolisi was not playing in this game, who of this young, exciting Springboks team would you have made captain? I feel like Andre Pollard, for me, probably the front runner, and maybe you look at Ruan Nokia as a bit of a co-captaincy off of the bench, but overall still a brilliant player to have up against the Italians. Kolisi not actually playing either of the two matches in July, so a great opportunity for him to get some minutes. Number 7, Ben Jason Dixon, so he also has had very limited minutes throughout this year. And then number 8, it is Marco van Staden. Now, he hasn't had a huge amount of time in that 8 jersey, and perhaps some wanted to see him at 6 with Siya Kolisi as the number 8 if they were going to be playing both of those two men. But van Staden, he is the hooker cover in the Springbok side to be able to cover late for Johan Grobbelaar if there are any injuries. They've also got some brilliant loose forward replacements off the bench too. But the absolute last thing that South Africa can afford here is to have Marco van Staden and also Johan Grobbelaar with injuries. But then it's no different to if a normal side, for instance, last week, if we had seen Malcolm Marx and Johan Grobbelaar get injured. I know that that was one of the concerns, seeing as both men are starting, whether or not there's more chance of an injury in this type of physical matchup, but hopefully they will be fine to have a hooker for the full 80 minutes. Moving on to the backline, Morne van den Berg and Andre Pollard. They will be the 9-10 combination. Now, those two men actually started in the first match up against the Italians in the July internationals, although the other players in the backline consisted of the likes of a Cheslin Colby, a Jesse Creel, a Damien Dialindi. They don't have those three in this matchup. Instead, Kurtley Arendse, he will once again be out on that left wing side, recently returning from his injury. And tell you what, that's a sentence we've been saying a fair amount throughout the Springboks lineup. Ethan Hooker, he moves from the wing into the centre pairing. He is very capable of playing both. He has done it for the Sharks throughout the URC, and he partners alongside Kanan Moody as that 13, an outstanding young talent. He can play on the wing as well, so plenty of versatility across The Springboks backline, number 14, Edwald van der Merwe. He did actually get to start the second match up against the Italians, got himself 2 tries, and Damian Willemse, he will close out the starting lineup. He is the fullback for this match. Talking about the bench for a little second, the bench is certainly a different looking one than we are used to seeing. Gerhard Stennekamp and Wilco Low are considered the 16 and 17 off the bench in this game, but Arge Snyman as a number 18. I made the mistake in my lineup video of pretty much instinctively saying 19 for that man, but no, he is the 18 in this game, and Ruan Nokia as the 19. So the propping replacements, the locking replacements, and then also 2 men who can play in the loose forward trio. One of these 2, in fact, both of them can play as backs if needed. That is Andre Esterhuizen as well as Kwaka Smith. And then Grant Williams and Mani Libbok, they are the genuine back replacements for the Springboks in this match. But there's been a lot of talk since the Springboks lineup. Is Rassi underestimating this Italian side by making so many bold switches? Or is it more so that he knows how spoiled for choice he is across the Springboks squad? You've got so much depth. And also I mentioned about it in that lineup video. I think this is to try and find more hybrid players heading towards that World Cup. Yes, there is so much versatility already, but if you can find a couple hidden gems who can play multiple positions, that is exactly what you want as a coach. And this team, to me, particularly the 4-pack, is a lineup where Rassi's gone, let's give guys opportunities and start to get some more minutes under their belt for these newer players for the Springboks. But jumping into the Italian lineup, I'll tell you right now, nothing as eventful as what we have seen from the Springboks. It is a strong-looking Italian side, different from what we saw throughout the July internationals. We've got to remember they were missing some very key players throughout those July matches, so a pretty different-looking team compared to what we did see for those 2 tests. But in the front row, it is Danilo Fischetti, Giacomo Nicotera, and at number 3, Marco Riccioni. Now, he is a dangerous scrummager. He's going head-to-head with Boan Fento. I do think that scrums later on in the game, definitely if Italy start to fatigue a little bit, that is where South Africa will try and take control of not just that part of the game, but set pieces in general, rolling mauls, getting on the front foot and forcing Italy to give away a few penalties. In the locking duo, it is Nicolo Canoni alongside Andrea Zambonin in that number 5 jersey. Ross Vincent slots in at 6, Manuel Zuliani at 7, and then the other Canoni brother, he slots in as 8, with Lorenzo Canoni closing out this Italian 4-pack. Now, normally what gets talked about is that physicality of this Italian side. They play with a lot of passion. They've got some pretty speedy backs in this lineup as well, so a nice balance heading into this game. Up against the Boks, Stephen Varney, he will be the starting 9 with Paolo Garbisi slotting in at 10. Now, throughout the matches of July, we did normally see Fusco alongside Dari, so 2 changes in that department. Out on the left wing, Monty Ioane, another player we didn't see in July. Tommaso Manoncello in the midfield alongside Juan Inacio Brex, who is captain for this Italian team. Lewis Liner out on the right wing. He has been having some tremendous form throughout 2025. And Ange Capuzio, he closes out the Italian starting lineup. Off the bench, we do see the 6-2 split from the Italians. So knowing this will be a hard-hitting affair up against South Africa and knowing that they need to have a bit more in the gas tank when it comes to their forwards in the later stages of the contest. But the likes of a Tommaso Allen, a very key player for the Italians here, alongside Spagnuolo and Ferrari, the 2 replacement props. But moving on now to the key head-to-heads in this contest. First one, I'm going with the fullbacks, Damian Willemse versus Ange Capuzio. I do think that those 2 can control the game from the back for their respective sides. Damian Willemse, he has got experience up against the Italians and also that versatility. If there's any sort of injury, you can slot him straight into 12. They've also got Andre Esterhuizen as an inside centre replacement as well. But overall, Damian Willemse, he is at his best when he doesn't seem like he's overthinking his game. We saw in that match last week up against the French. Sounds bad to say, but South Africa got better when Mani Libbok came on and Damian Willemse came off. And that's not what we were used to saying in the Rugby Championship. It was when Willemse was out there and he was playing his natural game. He was one of the most dangerous on attack out of the whole side. And with this backline here, Handré Pollard, I'm curious about the tactics that we are going to see from the South Africans. Whether or not with the speed of the backs, we are just going to see all-out pace being shown, or whether or not there will be a bit more of a controlled type of feel to the game like we saw in the first match up against the Italians. But Ange Capuzio, great to have him back in this Italian side. Such a dangerous player on the counter-attack. Also has a decent boot on him, which will be key if Pollard is going to be playing more of that kicking role. But overall, both backlines, they are stacked for this game, which is fantastic to see. And hopefully they balance each other out quite nicely to give us some very entertaining rugby. In the forward packs, in terms of the head-to-head, I am going to go with the hookers in this match. Johan Grobbelaar versus Giacomo Nicotera. The reason behind that is because for so long we have seen such a brilliant job done by Malcolm Marx for the Springboks. Now, Johan Grobbelaar has actually had a couple very decent cameos throughout 2025, particularly throughout the November internationals, but this is the type of game where they don't have Malcolm Marx on the bench. They don't have a Bongi Umbanambi or someone with a lot of experience as a backup option. If the lineouts are going poorly for South Africa from the start, do you then put Marco van Staden into that hooker role? And if you do that, will that even fix the problems of the lineout? This is the type of four-pack we have not seen together for South Africa throughout this year. So it's that question of cohesion, which I feel, yes, it's all well and good chucking all these players in, but are they going to work together in the way that Rassi wants? And you'd have to assume the answer is yes. If he's put them in there, it's for very good reason. But the lineout, if it is not functioning, that is one little element of this game that Italy have to fully take advantage of if they want to get close in this contest. But Nicotera, he's normally pretty decent on a line-out, although up against these top sides, a lot of pressure normally coming on the line-out still. Someone like a Franco Mostert, great at getting up in the air and just whacking it away from the opposition later on in the game. Aurge Snyman, Ruan Nokia, two men who can do that exact same thing. But Nicolo Canoni, I'm looking at him as one of those key members of this Italian forward pack, mainly because of what has to happen at the line-outs alongside Nicotera. And then the last head-to-head, there's just so many in this matchup. I'm thinking about going for one off the bench, and I think that's Tommaso Allen and Manie Libbok in the number 23 jerseys. Manie Libbok has been in some of his best form throughout 2025. He started getting a lot more of his kicks over and just offers so much attacking danger for the Springboks. Normally, it is when the opposition are starting to slow down, so that favours Manie Libbok even more in this matchup. You would assume that this forward pack for South Africa has been told to go out there, empty the gas tank, because they have got plenty of replacements, can make their way onto the field. But Manie Libbok, such a great player to have alongside Grant Williams making their way onto the field later on for the Boks. And Tommaso Allen, I do feel if there is something not quite going right in that starting lineup, he is the type of player who could come on and completely right those wrongs for the Italians. He seems to have great game control, very handy with vision as well on the Italian attack. But defensively, that is where he really has to step up here, because you know South Africa are throwing absolutely everything at the Sazuri side as often as possible. So a bit of game management later on could go a long way for the Italians here. But now we move on to the prediction. Now, we did see these two sides play in July, like I mentioned, twice. First game, 42 points to 24 in favour of the South Africans. Second game, 45-0 in favour of South Africa as well. So they have got 2 wins over the Italians. It has been a little while since Italy have caused an upset up against South Africa. I believe back in about 2018, I want to say, was the last time that they beat them. But their side is looking pretty strong heading into this contest, managing to get the win over the Australians just last week, 26 points to 19. Although the Springboks having a win of their own up against France, making a statement after receiving that red card of Ludiacha and managing to beat the French by quite a hefty margin of those 15 points. But score prediction. This is one of those ones that Rassi has made so many changes that it may take a bit of time for the team to find their rhythm, but it is very hard when you look through at the attacking skill of this backline, as well as those few players in the full pack who will just run and run until they can't anymore. It's hard to believe that South Africa won't get the win here. It's just that question of how much by. And I feel like depending on what margin you go with, depends on how angry people get at you. I still think a comfortable win here for the South Africans with these changes. Maybe it takes them a bit longer to gel and get going in this game, but I would still say South Africa by 25 in this match. It is extremely harsh against the Italians, and I know that as I am saying it, but South Africa at the moment, they are on another level. So I'm going 44-19 in favour of South Africa. I'm giving Italy a few points in this game just because of the fact that I feel they are definitely a strong enough side, but I just find it hard to believe in the last 20 minutes we're not going to see 2 or 3 tries being scored by the Boks. But do let me know, of course, who you think will be winning this game. It is kicking off at 1:40 a.m. New Zealand time on Sunday morning. That will be a 2:40 p.m. kickoff for you guys in South Africa on Saturday afternoon. It is the first of the international games that we are covering on the channel. It's going to be epic, so be sure to tune in for that live commentary. Thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.